The Cold Start Problem, by Andrew Chen. Introduction. Imagine a startup founded by a star team. They'd had success before, building and selling a company for tens of millions. This time, they raised $17 million from top investors and hired 45 brilliant people to build a beautiful, quirky, and delightful product. For 4 years and 10 months, they poured their hearts into it. The product was a multiplayer game called Glitch, set inside the minds of 11 dreaming giants. The art looked like something out of a Dr. Seuss book. But there was a problem. A big one. The game was, in the words of one user, dreadfully boring. You just walked around and clicked on things. The company's own CEO later admitted that 97% of people who signed up were gone within 5 minutes. The game was a multiplayer experience, but without enough players, it was like a party with no guests. It was a ghost town. The startup, called Tiny Speck, was on the verge of complete failure. But this isn't a story about failure. It's a story about one of the most incredible reversals of fortune in modern business history. Because that failed gaming company, Tiny Speck, would eventually relaunch with a second product. A product that you have almost certainly heard of, and probably even use. That product was called Slack. Today, Slack is used by over 20 million people every day and was eventually sold for $26 billion. It went from a total loss to a world-changing success. How? What secret did they stumble upon? The answer lies at the heart of a book called The Cold Start Problem, by Andrew Chen. Chen is not an academic watching from the sidelines. He's a general partner at one of Silicon Valley's most famous venture capital firms, Andreessen Horowitz, and before that, he led growth teams at Uber during its most explosive, world-conquering years. He has lived and breathed this problem. And what he reveals in this book is a hidden blueprint, an invisible architecture that explains why some products, like Slack, catch fire and change the world, while others, like Glitch, flicker and die. It explains the force that powers everything from Uber and Airbnb to Tinder, Twitch, and Zoom. That force is called a network effect. It's the simple idea that a product becomes more valuable as more people use it. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you the secrets from this incredible book. You will learn the 5 stages every great network must pass through to succeed. You will understand why starting small is the key to getting big, why the biggest networks are often the most fragile, and how you can apply these timeless principles to anything you want to build in your own life. This isn't just a summary, it's a journey into the heart of how the modern world connects. Book summary. Have you ever walked into a party, looked around, and realized there are only 2 other people there, standing awkwardly in opposite corners? What do? You probably leave. An empty party is no fun. But what if you walked into that same room and it was buzzing with energy, filled with interesting people and great music? You'd stay, wouldn't you? You'd want to be a part of it. This, in its essence, is the cold start problem. It's the fundamental paradox that every new social app, every marketplace, every online community faces at its birth. A network is only valuable when people are on it. But how do you get people to join when no one is there in the first place? It's the ultimate chicken and egg situation. For most new products, this isn't just a challenge, it's a death sentence. The very network effect that promises incredible growth in the future actually works against you at the start. Andrew Chen calls these anti-network effects a vicious cycle where new users show up, see an empty party, and leave, making the party even emptier for the next person. So, how do the giants of our time, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, the Slacks of the world, overcome this? For decades, people pointed to something called Metcalfe's law. It's a formula that says the value of a network grows exponentially with each new person who joins. If you have 10 people, the value is 10 squared, or 100. If you have 100 people, the value is 100 squared, or 10,000. It sounds powerful, and during the dot-com boom, investors used this idea to justify enormous valuations for new websites. But Andrew Chen argues this law is deeply flawed and, for anyone actually building something, painfully irrelevant. It doesn't tell you what to do when you have 0 users. It doesn't account for the quality of the connections, or the fact that some users are vastly more important than others. It's a simple, academic model that fails in the messy reality of the real world. To truly understand how networks work, Chen suggests we look not to computer science, but to the animal kingdom. Specifically, to meerkats. Meerkats are incredibly social animals. They live in groups called mobs, and they survive by working together. When a predator approaches, one meerkat will stand on its hind legs and let out a specific alarm call, alerting the whole group to the danger. A large, dense mob of meerkats is safe. They can protect each other, find food together, and thrive. More meerkats are better. But what happens if the mob gets too small? If there aren't enough meerkats to stand watch, they become vulnerable. A predator can pick them off one by one. As the population shrinks, it becomes even less safe, causing more meerkats to leave or be caught, until the mob collapses entirely. Ecologists have a name for this tipping point: the Allais threshold. It's the minimum number of individuals a population needs to survive and grow. Below that threshold, the population is doomed. Above it, it can flourish. This, Chen argues, is the true law of networks. It's not Metcalfe's law. It's Meerkat's law. A new social app with too few users will collapse, just like a small mob of meerkats. But once it crosses a certain threshold, a tipping point, it becomes self-sustaining and can grow exponentially. But there's a flip side. What happens if the meerkat population grows too large for its environment? They run out of food and resources, and the growth slows down and plateaus. This is called the carrying capacity. The same thing happens to networks. A social feed with too much content becomes overwhelming. A marketplace with too many listings makes it impossible to find what you're looking for. This is overcrowding. This simple, elegant model, the S-shaped curve of the meerkats, gives us a powerful new framework for understanding the entire life cycle of a network. Chen breaks this journey into 5 distinct stages, a roadmap that every successful network follows. It all begins with Stage 1, solving the cold start problem. The secret to solving the cold start problem isn't to launch big. It's not about a flashy announcement or getting on the front page of the news. In fact, that's often the worst thing you can do. The goal is to build one, single, tiny network that is so dense and so engaged that it can sustain itself. Chen calls this the atomic network, the smallest possible network that is stable and can grow on its own. Think about it. If you can build one stable atomic network, you can probably build a second one right next to it. And if you can build 2, you can build 10. And if you can build 10, you can build 100, and eventually, conquer the world. Everything starts with getting that first one right. For a history lesson in this, we don't have to look at a tech company. We can look at the invention of the credit card. In 1958, Bank of America wanted to launch a new product called the Bank AmeriCard. They faced a classic network problem. Shoppers wouldn't want a card that no stores accepted, and stores wouldn't want to accept a card that no shoppers had. It was a perfect stalemate. So what did they do? They didn't launch across America. They didn't even launch across California. They chose one small, isolated city, Fresno. Why Fresno? Because 45% of the families there already banked with Bank of America. It was a dense, captive audience. Then, they did something remarkable. In a single day, an event later dubbed the Fresno Drop, they mailed 60,000 active, ready-to-use credit cards to those families. Overnight, an entire city of consumers was armed with a new way to pay. At the same time, they went to all the local merchants in Fresno and said, "Tomorrow, thousands of your best customers are going to walk in with these cards. You need to be ready to accept them." Over 300 merchants signed up immediately. In one coordinated move, Bank of America created a perfect, self-sustaining atomic network. From that single city, the idea exploded, and the modern credit card industry was born. This is the playbook. Start with the smallest, densest network you can find. For Slack, the atomic network was a single small team of 3 to 10 people inside a company. For Facebook, it was a single college campus, Harvard. For Tinder, it was a single party at the University of Southern California. But building even one atomic network is incredibly difficult. And to do it, you have to focus on the single most important group of people in any network: what Chen calls the hard side. In any network, there's a small minority of users who create a disproportionate amount of the value. On YouTube, billions of people watch videos, but only a few million upload them. On Uber, there are 20 to 30 riders for every one driver. On Wikipedia, hundreds of millions of people read articles every month, but a tiny group of just a few thousand active editors write and maintain almost everything. In fact, 1/3 of all English-language articles on Wikipedia have been touched by a single, unpaid volunteer editor named Stephen Pruitt. These creators, drivers, and editors are the hard side of the network. They do more work, are harder to attract, and are harder to keep, but without them, the network would collapse. The consumers, the easy side, will only show up if the hard side is already there, creating value. Therefore, the first and most critical task in solving the cold start problem is to build a product that solves a painful, urgent problem for the hard side. Let's look at Tinder. Before Tinder, online dating sites were designed like classified ads. The most popular members, particularly women, would be completely overwhelmed with hundreds of messages, most of them low quality. It was a terrible experience for them, the hard side of the dating network. Tinder solved this brilliantly with its double opt-in swipe mechanic. A woman would only receive a message from someone if she had also swiped right on them. This simple innovation gave the hard side control, filtering out the noise and making the experience fun and safe instead of overwhelming. They solved a hard problem for the hard side, and the network took off. To launch their first atomic network, they didn't run a national ad campaign. They threw a birthday party for a popular student at USC. The catch? To get into the party, you had to download the Tinder app at the door. This created an instant atomic network of 500 of the most social, hyper-connected people on campus, all in one place, at one time. The next day, those students woke up, opened the app, and saw people they had just met at the party. It was magical. Once you've built that first atomic network, you enter stage 2, the tipping point. This is where you scale your success. You take the playbook from that first win and you copy and paste it, over and over. Tinder went from one party at USC to throwing parties at campuses all across the country. They built one atomic network, then another, and each one became easier to launch than the last. The momentum becomes unstoppable as entire markets begin to tip in your favor. There are several powerful strategies for reaching the tipping point. One is the famous invite-only launch, used by companies like LinkedIn and Clubhouse. The goal here isn't just to create hype. It's a clever way to curate your network. By giving invites to a specific group of people, say, successful professionals in Silicon Valley, you ensure that they will invite other people just like them. The network copies itself, maintaining a high level of quality as it grows. Another powerful strategy is come for the tool, stay for the network. This is one of the most brilliant ways to sidestep the cold start problem entirely. You start by offering a product that's useful all by itself, for a single user. This is the tool. Then, once you have a critical mass of users, you introduce features that connect them together. This is the network. The classic story here is Instagram. Before Instagram, there was an app called Hipstamatic. It was a fantastic tool that let you apply cool, vintage filters to your photos. It was incredibly popular and even won Apple's App of the Year award. But it was just a tool. After you edited your photo, you had to manually upload it somewhere else, like Facebook. Instagram came along and offered a similar tool, free photo filters, but they wrapped it inside a social network. You came for the tool, the filters, but you stayed for the network, the feed, the likes, the comments, the followers. Instagram built a network, while Hipstamatic built a feature. And as we all know, the network won. Once the market begins to tip and growth is accelerating, you hit stage 3, escape velocity. This is the phase of hypergrowth, the classic hockey stick curve that every startup dreams of. But what looks effortless from the outside is actually a period of furious work on the inside. The goal is to strengthen and amplify the network effects that are now powering your growth. Chen breaks the vague concept of network effects into 3 distinct, powerful forces that you can actually measure and improve. He calls this the trio of forces. First is the acquisition effect. This is the network's ability to acquire new users for you, often for free. This is viral growth. The most famous example is PayPal. In its early days, growth was slow. Then they found their killer use case: sellers on eBay. To supercharge growth, they launched a referral program that was pure genius. They gave you $10 for signing up, and another $10 for every friend you referred who also signed up. People were essentially getting paid to grow the network. Growth exploded, going from 10,000 users to 5 million in just over a year. Second is the engagement effect. This is the idea that the network gets stickier and more engaging as it grows. As more of your friends and colleagues join a platform like Slack or LinkedIn, you find more reasons to use it. You move up an engagement ladder, going from an occasional user to a power user as new use cases are unlocked. Third is the economic effect. This is how the business model itself gets better as the network grows larger. Think about Uber's driver subsidies. In a small, new city, Uber might have to pay a driver an extra $15 per hour to meet a guaranteed earning, because there are very few riders. But in a large, dense network like New York City, that same driver might get so many trips that Uber only has to pay a subsidy of $5 per hour, or even nothing at all. The larger network is more efficient, allowing it to offer better prices to riders and higher earnings to drivers, creating a powerful economic advantage over smaller competitors. These three forces, acquisition, engagement, and economics, work together like a flywheel, spinning faster and faster, propelling a product into the billions of users. But no rocket ship can fly forever. Every network, no matter how successful, eventually enters stage 4, hitting the ceiling. Growth stalls. The once unstoppable hockey stick curve starts to flatten out and squiggle. This happens for many reasons. The first and most obvious is market saturation. You simply run out of new people in your target market to sign up. eBay faced this in the year 2000 when its US business, for the first time ever, stopped growing month over month. Their solution was to start adding layers to the cake. They launched new formats like Buy It Now to appeal to users who didn't like auctions. They expanded into international markets. What looked like one continuous growth curve was actually a series of smaller S-curves stacked on top of each other. Another powerful force that slows growth is what Chen calls the law of shitty click-throughs. This law states that every single marketing channel, without exception, becomes less effective over time. The very first banner ad on the internet in 1994 had an incredible 78% of people click on it. Today, a good click-through rate is less than 1%. We've learned to ignore them. The same thing has happened with email, social media ads, and every other channel. As they get crowded, their effectiveness plummets. But perhaps the most dangerous forces come from within the network itself. As a network grows from a small, tight-knit community into a massive, global city, it can be torn apart by its own success. This is what happened to Usenet, the internet's very first social network. In its early days, it was a community of academics and researchers who all knew each other. There were shared norms and a culture of netiquette. But in September 1993, AOL began offering Usenet access to millions of new users. The network was flooded with newbies who didn't understand the culture. The thoughtful discussions were drowned out by spam, trolls, and low-quality content. This moment became known as Eternal September, the September that never ended, and it marked the beginning of Usenet's decline. The network collapsed under its own weight. This is a phenomenon called context collapse. When you're just with your close friends, you can be yourself. But when your parents, your teachers, and your boss all join the same network, you self-censor. The network becomes a single, collapsed context, and it feels unsafe to be authentic. At the same time, the network becomes overcrowded. When YouTube first started, you could just browse a list of the most recent videos. But what do you do when millions of videos are being uploaded every day? The sheer volume makes it impossible to find anything good. This is why platforms like YouTube and TikTok have invested so heavily in recommendation algorithms. They use data and machine learning to cut through the noise and show you content that's relevant to you, creating millions of personalized micronetworks within the larger network. These negative forces are always present, constantly trying to pull a successful network back down to earth. The battle to break through the ceiling is a never-ending fight. But if a network can survive this stage, it enters the final phase of its journey. Stage 5. The moat. The legendary investor Warren Buffett talks about building a moat around your business, a durable competitive advantage that protects you from competitors. For networked products, the moat is the network itself. But here's the twist. If your product has network effects, so do all of your competitors. This leads to a unique and brutal form of competition. It's not about who has more features. Features are easy to copy. It's a battle of network versus network. And this is where we see one of the most fascinating business dramas of the last decade: Airbnb versus a German clone called Wimdu. In 2011, Wimdu launched with a single goal: copy Airbnb's entire business, but execute it faster in Europe. They were backed by a notorious startup studio called Rocket Internet, famous for its attack of the clone strategy. Wimdu raised $90 million, more than 10 times what Airbnb had at the time, and hired 400 employees in just 100 days. They scraped Airbnb's listings, poached their hosts, and on paper, they looked unstoppable. It was a classic David versus Goliath story. But Airbnb had a secret weapon: the quality of its network. Wimdu, in its race for speed, took shortcuts. They focused on quantity over quality, signing up large property managers with hundreds of low-end hostel rooms. They built a large network, but it was a low-trust, low-quality network. Airbnb, on the other hand, had spent years cultivating a community of hosts who offered unique, personal experiences. They focused on the hard side of the network and obsessed over the quality of their inventory. When a traveler from America who loved Airbnb tried Wimdu in Europe, the experience was disappointing. The network effect was weaker because the quality was lower. Airbnb, meanwhile, had a global network effect. A traveler from New York could use the same app to book a stay in Paris, creating a seamless experience. Wimdu couldn't compete with that. In the end, Airbnb's smaller but higher quality network won. Wimdu, despite all its funding and speed, collapsed and shut down. This story reveals the asymmetry of network-based competition. The smaller player, the David, has an advantage. They can cherry-pick a single, underserved niche within the larger network and build a superior product for that one community. This is what all the startups that unbundled Craigslist did. Airbnb took the rooms for rent section, Zillow took real estate, and Tinder took personals. They built focused, high-quality atomic networks that Craigslist, with its one-size-fits-all approach, couldn't defend. The incumbent, the Goliath, often responds with a big bang launch, using its massive distribution to push a new product to millions of users at once. But as we saw with Google's failed attempt to compete with Facebook using Google+, this often creates millions of weak, disconnected users who churn out because they don't have a dense network of friends to engage with. The network is a mile wide and an inch deep. The journey from a cold start to a defensible moat is a long and perilous one. It requires an almost counterintuitive approach: start small to get big. Focus on a tiny, passionate community before you try to take on the world. Obsess over the hard side of your network, because they are the ones who create all the value. And understand that even when you reach the top, the battle is never truly over. New competitors will always be there, cherry-picking at the edges of your empire, looking for their own cold start. Commentary. As we wrap up our journey through the cold start problem, it's hard not to look at the digital world around us a little differently. Every time you open an app, you can now see the invisible architecture at play: the atomic networks, the engagement loops, the battle for the hard side. Andrew Chen has given us a new lens through which to view the forces that shape our modern lives. The most profound lesson from this book, for me, is the power of starting small. In a world that celebrates massive launches and going viral overnight, the book reminds us that every enduring community, every world-changing network, started with a tiny, passionate, and often overlooked group of people. Whether it was a single party at a college, a small city in California, or a handful of editors building an encyclopedia, the pattern is the same. Find your smallest viable network, serve them obsessively, and build from there. This is a powerful lesson not just for aspiring tech entrepreneurs, but for anyone trying to build something from nothing. If you want to start a club at your school, don't try to get the whole student body to join at once. Find the 10 people who are most passionate about the idea and build a vibrant community with them first. If you want to start a YouTube channel, don't worry about appealing to millions. Make videos for the 100 people who will become your die-hard fans. Solve a hard problem for them, create magic moments for them, and they will become the foundation upon which everything else is built. The book also serves as a crucial reminder that technology alone is not enough. The most successful network products are not just feats of engineering. They are feats of sociology and psychology. They understand human motivation, the desire for connection, status, and community. They succeed because they design systems that bring out the best in people, that encourage contribution, and that create value through interaction. So, here are a few simple ways you can apply these ideas in your own life, starting today. First, whenever you get a new idea for a project, ask yourself, what is my atomic network? Don't think about the total addressable market. Think about the smallest group of people who would feel like your product was built just for them. Who are they? Where do they hang out? How can you bring them together and create an experience so valuable they'll never want to leave? Second, identify the hard side. In any group or community you're a part of, who are the 1% of people doing 90% of the work? The person who always organizes the events, the friend who starts the most interesting conversations, the creator who posts the best content. These people are the lifeblood of the network. Acknowledge them, support them, and build things that make their lives easier. If you serve the hard side, the rest of the network will thrive. And finally, embrace the come for the tool, stay for the network mindset. Before you ask people to join a community, give them something of value first. A useful piece of software, an entertaining video, a helpful guide. Offer a single-player utility that solves a problem. And then, once you've earned their trust, gently introduce them to the power of the network. The Cold Start Problem is more than just a business book. It's a field guide to building communities in the digital age. It's a reminder that the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology, it's people connecting with other people. That was our deep dive into the Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen. We've explored the core framework and the biggest stories from the book today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The true value comes from engaging with the ideas yourself. The real magic happens when you read the book, when a particular story or a simple phrase sparks an idea you didn't expect. This summary is your map, but the treasure is found on the journey. If any of the concepts we've talked about today, the atomic network, the hard side, the 5 stages of growth, have resonated with you, I highly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning business strategy. It's about understanding the hidden dynamics of the connected world we all live in. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to Billionaire's Bookshelf. It helps us reach more curious minds like yourself and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.